Welcome to Zishan On Air and Edited, and I welcome you all. Let's dive right into what happened last week at the UN General Assembly. Uh, it was an overwhelming vote, and a lot of countries in majority voted recognizing the state of Palestine. So this is, if my understanding is correct, second time for sure, when the UN General Assembly has voted in big numbers. Last time it was 143. This time it was also close to 150 nation states all over the world. And what that means is that the UN General Assembly has given more rights and privileges to the Palestinian territories. So that's good news for Palestinians and all those who are living in the occupied territory, because that's the consensus in terms of the world international bodies, in terms of the various independent and credible organizations. And according to Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, Human Rights, United Nations Human Rights Council, as well as Al-Haq and Beth Salem, they consider the entire state of Israel as an apartheid regime and a state that has segregation, and they consider it as an apartheid state. So this is very, very serious in terms of how the Palestinians and the people living in Palestine, they go with a lot of restrictions. So the good news for the Palestinians that a lot of states in the world, they are with you. And a lot of people are with you because they recognize that you are occupied, and this 75-year of a struggle that is going on for decades, regardless of how the sellout politicians, they spin it. When you play for a team and when your favorite team may not be playing well, and some of the players in that team are actually not listening to the other players within the same team or who are part of the team, but that doesn't mean that all the players for that team are not rooting for the right things or for the right reasons, because they want their team to win. So America has a responsibility, and Americans are certainly understanding this delicate, complicated, and complex issue. But they are also very smart in terms of recognizing that, yes, there are rights that need to be given to the Palestinians, and at the United Nations in New York, those rights and privileges, they were expanded. And I hope that those who are in the authority of ensuring that these rights and privileges are given to the Palestinians and the Palestinian territories, that they should be abiding by that. Now, the UN Security Council, that's where the next step would be. And we don't know what would happen. We certainly hope that the United States of America and the US government actually votes in favor of the Palestinian statehood and Palestine becomes a nation state, because in order to recognize and accept the permanent statehood and the permanent recognition of a state, it goes to the UN Security Council. Now, many people may recognize and understand that what is happening in the United Nations. Well, United Nations, especially the UN Security Council, it has 5 permanent members, and you all know who they are. But the most important aspect of the UN Security Council is the veto power. And UN Security Council is the main body that basically then decides the ultimate fate for those very sensitive and very complex, as well as sometimes not as complex and sensitive issues as well. But that's where dirty politics come into the picture. So sometimes China, they veto some things. USSR, when they used to be USSR, they used to veto, and then US, in fact, also vetoes. And the Russia or the Russian Federation, China, right now they are in alliance, and hopefully that the US can certainly play that leading role and does not veto this time. So we can certainly hope for that, but it doesn't seem that the US government is still in a position to actually go that far. because as we know, a lot of politicians and those who we elect and they get into the power of authority, sometimes they stop listening to their constituents, and they don't listen and recognize and understand that many Americans, overwhelmingly in big numbers, in fact, some of the recent polls, and even a poll that was done by CNN, that they say that 60%, and then another poll, 80% of Americans are in favor of permanent ceasefire, and they're also in favor of giving rights and giving the Palestinians their due fair share that recognize them as an independent state. So let's see what happens. I would like to share some very interesting information as well here with regards to the Pulitzer Prize winner Nathan Thrall, and he wrote this book, A Day in the Life of Abd Salama, Anatomy of a Jerusalem Tragedy, and he actually also recognized that there is a systemic racism, systemic domination, and the policies and the system is set up in a way in Israel that Palestinians, they feel ignored, and they are not getting the rights that anyone should get. In fact, there are certainly in a state where the system is a system of domination. That's what he actually called it. And if you read the book, it basically goes into very specific details on a day-to-day basis of this fictional character, although sometimes that's how they get away in terms of publishing some of these books as well. Otherwise, the publishers, because of the fear of some political pressures, they may not even publish it. So it's very interesting how people who have spent time in Israel, they see that in terms of how the Palestinian people, even those who are Israeli citizens and those Arabs who, some of them, not many, who are living in Israel and they are Israeli citizens, although they are Arab Israelis, they also feel that way. And that's where this book basically goes into further detail. One very bombshell and news that really shocked everyone, but to many it was not really a shock, maybe a surprise, and I would say not even a surprise, was this news by CNN. And finally we saw some news that basically was about this whole I would say situation where they found this detention camp in Israel, and if you look at some of the information that I'm also sharing on the screen, CNN spoke to 3 Israeli whistleblowers who worked at the Side Taman Desert Camp, which holds Palestinians detained during Israel's invasion of Gaza. All spoke out at risk of legal repercussions and reprisals from groups supportive of Israel's hardline policies in Gaza. They paint a picture of a facility where doctors sometimes amputated prisoners' limbs due to injuries sustained from constant handcuffing, of medical procedures sometimes performed by underqualified medics, earning it a reputation for being, quote, a paradise for interns, unquote, and where the air is filled with the smell of neglected wounds left to rot. So that's basically the news that was shared by CNN. It was breaking news. Quote, we were told they were not allowed to move. They should sit upright. They are not allowed to talk, not allowed to peek under their blindfold, unquote. Guards were instructed, quote, to scream ascot, unquote, shut up in Arabic, and told to, quote, pick people out that were problematic and punish them, unquote, the sources added. So these were the whistleblowers, and they are courageous, and they basically shared this information with CNN. So this footage of Israeli torture camp used to abuse kidnapped men from Gaza, 3 Israeli whistleblowers that I talked about, and this paint a picture of this facility that I was talking about, where all this information basically was shared. And as you can see, there are some pictures on the screen as well, which the whistleblowers took. So the situation is dire, and then not only about this detention camp, that's also some very bad news, very negative news coming out of Israel. And unfortunately, the pressure is on those who are in DC, and especially those who are in the State Department and then the US administration, that they really ought to look into these serious not only just allegations, but even from ICC, the International Criminal Court, where 12 US Republican senators, that's right, 12, so a dozen US senators, and they are all from the Republican Party, they actually wrote a letter on April 24th with severe repercussions to Khan, who is one of the main judge over there, and the ICC court, they are very close to issuing a verdict, and they are also issuing arrest warrant to Benjamin Netanyahu and others, accusing them of war crimes. And this is a serious charge. So these 12 US senators, they are all from the Republican Party. All of them, 12 US Republican senators, have written a letter to ICC. And if you read that letter, and you can see that on my Facebook page as well, and on social media, and it's also public knowledge now. But obviously, it's not going to be shared as much with the traditional media, but it's very serious. And that's where people who are interested, they should reach out to those senators. Those senators' names are out there, and they wrote that letter. And it's basically something where you would expect a sitting U.S. senator to, in fact, stand up for human rights, stand up for accountability, and stand up for holding people accountable, because otherwise, are we going to live in a world where there is no international law, there is no international justice, and ICC or the International Court of Justice, all these are just courts that are out there just to punish those who are weaker leaders or weakened nations? If you recall, a reminder for everyone that Slobodan Milosevic, he was the former leader of Yugoslavia, if you remember, and then the Yugoslavia was broken to Bosnia Herzegovina, and then Kosovo, and then some other regions that were carved out, and then Czech Republic also came out of it as well, if you remember. So the Serbs and then the local indigenous population, as well as the Bosnians, when they went to war, the ICC, the same court who basically has already issued that there's a high risk of genocide. They actually said that. That's the International Criminal Court. And same court, they obviously had jurisdiction. They do have jurisdiction, regardless of the US and Israel. They do not recognize ICC, or they are not signatories in terms of recognizing ICC's jurisdiction, regardless. They can argue that, but the international lawyers and the eminent international lawyers with good reputation and credibility, they argue in favor of jurisdiction, and they say that yes. So the Benjamin Netanyahu's government is becoming isolated, and the only government in terms of as one of the superpowers is the U.S. government, actually. That and when I say U.S. government, obviously those who are in charge of policy making and international affairs and foreign policy, they are the ones who are actually, according to the lot of prominent and very independent thinkers and journalists. Amy Goodman is one of them. She also called that Secretary of State Blinken and President Biden, and even the former U.S. diplomat for 18 years, Rahara, she also mentioned that they are putting U.S. national security at risk. So there are some of those voices. They are not as many, but those voices are certainly out there, and those who are paying attention, they are certainly a lot of eyebrows are getting raised. And I think people are understanding that there is something really fishy and wrong that is happening as we speak, because this is about Americans. This is about our taxpayer funded bombs that are wreaking havoc and causing human suffering beyond imagination. And also it's about humanity, and those crimes against humanity are occurring because US is still providing weapons of mass destruction to Israel. So we have got to make sure that when we support, in terms of the analogy from a sports standpoint, when we root for our team and we support one team, or we are supporting a local teams, and let's say we are part of Team USA, that doesn't mean that all the players are also playing good in the team. There could be some players who are not playing for the team, and they may not be scoring all the time, and they may think that they're playing good, but those who are watching, it's like watching football or soccer or basketball game or baseball, whatever your favorite sport is, and you see that, yes, some of these players are certainly not playing good, and why are they even part of the team? When we listen to these commentators on different morning talk shows regarding sports, or even in the evening, or any of these very credible sports commentators, they say and use this kind of language. So I would like to emulate that kind of language as well, that when we are part of Team USA, that doesn't mean that everyone who is part of Team USA is actually rooting for those bad players as well. That's not what America is all about. That's why we still have US Constitution, we still have rule of law, and we still have a Bill of Rights, and those are enshrined in the US Constitution. And the US Supreme Court has in fact ruled that even hate speech in this country is allowed. That's why in US you will find a lot of diverse voices. If you just watch the traditional news outlets, news media, yes, those are bought out by certain lobbyists, certain corporate sponsors, and again, we cannot paint the picture and the entire picture with the same brush. So the message I would like to share with all of you, that Americans basically are Americans because we live in a country where we are not governed with authority, or with the dictator, or it's not an autocratic state. It is a country where people have rights, and they have the right to speak, they have right to assemble, and that's what is enshrined in our US Constitution as called as the First Amendment. And that's what First Amendment is. It's free speech, it's freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and freedom to actually assemble and protest and have peaceful assembly. Now, sometimes those protests, as people argue with these students, by the way, they have done a job which no one would have expected in the US, that these students are not only putting their academic careers and even their future careers at risk, but they are doing the right thing. And doing the right thing is always going to be easy because it's the right thing to do. And we do the right thing because it's not easy, or it's just difficult, so we're not going to do the right thing. That's what sets apart leaders versus those who basically are complacent. So everyone has a role to play here. Students are playing their role, and those of us who are citizens, or those of us who are in public service, or those of us who are elected officials, or those of us who are actually have some kind of our own set of circles or networks or group of people where we can influence and educate and create awareness, I would highly advise that we should do that. So with that, I'm signing off, because this was the major news, I would say, during the week. There was some other news as well, but when humanity is at risk, and when we are at a point where no one would have thought that in 2024 we still have crimes against humanity, or these war crimes, unfortunately it's happening as we speak. And even there are a lot of bombs in different areas in Rafah where Benjamin Netanyahu's government is dropping. And this is the area where millions of people have now taking refuge. So where are they going to go? So it's a disastrous situation, famine, starvation, and people's lives and health are at risk. People are still dying of hunger and famine, and these are credible independent news organizations information that I'm sharing with you. So I would highly advise that continue to do the right thing, do what you got to do, but at the same time, make sure that you continue to raise voices for those who cannot raise their voices on their own. They're not even here anymore. Over 40,000 people are dead. Over 80,000 people are injured. And when we don't raise a voice, when we don't speak up for those who are weak and oppressed, then shame on us. That's all I can say. So thank you for watching, and please spread this broadcast, this live streaming on multiple social media platforms. And I thank you for subscribing as well. Those of you who have not subscribed, please subscribe to YouTube channel as well, Zishan On Air Unedited, and then follow and connect with me on Facebook Live as well as through YouTube. Subscribe there, and Instagram, and follow me on Instagram as well, and then also on X platform, formerly known as Twitter. So with that, thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Stay strong out there and continue to get yourself acclimated and learn something new. And if you have learned things that basically should be unlearned, I think this is the moment in history where we can certainly learn and also unlearn some of the things that we thought or ought to be true, but they're not. Thank you so much.